I'm gonna share with you something that most Denver content creators will completely avoid, and let's be honest, that's because it's not exactly the best sales pitch for moving here to Denver, Colorado. And that's the fact that so many people that do decide to move out here end up leaving after only about 2 years. Now I'm gonna be transparent with you guys. I'm a Colorado and Denver native. I've been here my entire life. I love it here. I don't plan on going anywhere, but I do think it's really important to share some of the reasons that people decide that the Mile High City, Denver, just isn't the right spot for them. I'm gonna share with you guys in this video 5 of the biggest reasons, and you definitely wanna stick around for that 5th one because it is a doozy, and I think you guys are gonna be pretty wowed and just surprised at what it's all about. So again, guys, 5 of the biggest reasons that people decide that Denver's not the right spot after they've already come out and moved here. I'm really excited to share this brand new episode of Living in Denver with you guys, so stay tuned. All right, so now before I jump into these 5 reasons, I wanna share with you something else that could be a little bit of a gut punch. As of early 2026, Colorado has completely flip-flopped. And what I mean by this is there's actually now more people leaving than there are coming in. Now, this hasn't happened in a very long time. And in fact, this net migration has actually been at the lowest level this year since 2015, so over 10 years. And to take it even a step further, Colorado's overall population growth is actually at the lowest level since 1989. Crazy. Now, people are still moving here, but that wave has crested. And I think it's really important for people considering coming out here to understand some of the reasons, again, why that is. So the first reason that I want to talk about is just how the math starts to not really work anymore. And let me explain this a little bit further. Now, oftentimes people do come out to Colorado for the lifestyle, the mountains, the sunshine, all of the outdoor activities, that healthy, active lifestyle. That is the reason that I choose to still live here. But it comes with a price tag, and that price tag compounds over time. And that's something that oftentimes you don't realize, especially if you're just coming out here to visit a time or two before making that big decision. So let's just break down a few of the numbers here. Now, when it comes to rent, the average 1-bedroom apartment right now in the summer of 2026 is right around $1,670 per month. A 2-bedroom is up to over $2,000, about $2,200 a month. Now, comparing that with home ownership, the last year, 2025, we saw the median home sales price right around $565,000. Now, if you're thinking about buying, we're up about 27% over the national average, which is pretty significant. But the bigger part of all this is it's not just the housing, it's the combination of everything. For example, our healthcare here in Colorado, we're about 12% higher than the national average with that. But the part that's not talked about is what I like to call the lifestyle tax. And what I mean by this is in Colorado, when you move out here, you obviously have some aspirations to get involved with fun outdoor activities. At least I hope you are. That's why I still continue to live here, is all the great stuff that you can do for fun. Now, this lifestyle tax can add up quick. And that's because when you move here, you feel the social pull of all of these different activities and all the new friends you start making or doing these fun things, and you want to join in, and all these activities cost a lot of money. So just as one example, I'll use skiing, because skiing is personally my favorite, but it's also one of the most expensive. So you're already buying that new house, or maybe you're just renting, but again, significantly higher than the national average. Same thing with healthcare costs, insurance, all those other things that we can talk about a little bit later. But on top of all that, with skiing, you move out here, you have to buy skis, boots, everything that goes along with it, and buying a season ticket or at least a day pass to go up with your friends. We're talking several $1,000s here just with this one activity, and that's an activity just for one season, just for that winter season. Well, maybe winter and spring. My favorite time to ski is actually in the springtime, but you guys get the point. You know, all these expenses with things like skiing, mountain biking, hiking, whatever the activity is, all this adds up, and it's just something that people don't talk about when they talk about the cost of living out here in Colorado. Now, this is a lot different than a lot of other states. You know, most states that you move to, you know, they might not have all of these amazing activities that you can start doing. So, you know, this is something that is very unique, in my opinion, at least, with Colorado. You know, even if you look at other states like California, we'll use as an example. Yeah, you've got, you know, the beach and amazing, you know, stuff to do around there, but, you know, how much does it cost to buy a surfboard or, you know, whatever activities on the ocean that you're doing? You know, since it's not the same as with Colorado and some of the more mountainous type communities that just have so many different fun things to do, but they all come with a pretty stiff price point. So that was the first reason, but now I want to talk about the second reason that kind of falls in alignment with this one. And that first reason was kind of that sticker shock. The second one is a little bit more subtle, but I also think it's the one that really is a big factor when it comes to that 2-year mark and why that seems to be when a lot of people end up leaving Colorado. I call it the slow squeeze, and it works like this. When you move out to Denver, you start putting everything down on a piece of paper, maybe an Excel doc or however you do your budgeting, and you factor in your rent, your food, all these expenses, and for month 1, it makes sense. You're able to handle that. Month 2, same thing, you're good. But the kicker here is that all the costs in Denver, they don't stay the same. As you can imagine, they go up month after month, year after year. It's not a flat line. All these costs are going up. The one good side of this with rent, if you guys are renting out here, is that rentals have actually stayed fairly flat recently, and that's because of this buyer's market we're in, where a lot of people that have been before trying to buy homes are kind of waiting things out at the moment. So there's a lot more of just, I think, of a balance when it comes to rentals. So with rents, you're hopefully going to be, kind of a consistent price point today, but things change year after year, and you're going to see rents go up and up and up. And rent growth is one of the biggest factors for landlords here in Colorado to see their properties increase in value. They're really motivated by increasing their rents, not just to make a little bit more money, because when they do the whole rent growth across an entire portfolio of properties, we're talking massive difference in appreciation of what the property is going to sell for when it comes time for them to maybe sell and buy a new multifamily community. Now, another quick way to look at this before we move on, just imagine that you're paying $1,600 for rent, 1-bedroom apartment. Next year, let's just say it goes up to $1,700 and then $1,800. All of a sudden, just in a 2-year period of time, you're seeing about a 12 to 15% appreciation on what you're paying in rent. However, I'm sure that salary that you're agreeing to for the new job when you move out here, you're not getting that same 10 to 12% raise after only 1 or 2 years. It's not in alignment. And that's just rent. You have other things like car insurance. Colorado actually has the 5th highest car insurance averages across the nation. Just another example of costs going up and up and up. Or maybe you don't have hail insurance on your car because you don't even really understand what that is. You come out here and all of a sudden have a massive hailstorm. We get them every single year, especially right now in June and July. And you've got $6,000 or $7,000 worth of damage on your car just from having your car, unfortunately, parked outside during one of these freak storms. There's just all these different costs and expenses that, if you're not careful, can really lead you one direction, and that's leaving the state. So I know I've kind of went on and on here, but I'm just trying to make the point. There's a lot of expenses, but again, the real key to this point is that the average or the median household incomes aren't in the same alignment. They're not growing at that same pace that the expenses are. Now, the people that usually leave at about that 2-year mark, they're the ones that kind of made that maybe rash decision where they moved here without really thinking through some of these other expenses and how quickly they can add up. So my advice is just to budget an extra 10 to 15%. That way, when you do run into some of these unexpected expenses and see these prices going up year after year, by having a little bit of that cushion, that should help you. And then by that year 3, you can kind of do a little audit and really determine whether or not it makes sense to stay here, or maybe you're part of that other group that decides to leave. But at least by doing this, you've given yourself enough of that cushion to give it a good shot. Now let's just jump right into the third reason. Now the third reason is actually, something that maybe you've seen before on other videos. I've actually featured this in a few of my prior videos, and that's about the weather, but specifically how it's the weather that you move here for. It's a lot different than what you actually get. It's not what was in the brochure. And the best way to describe that from a very simple level is, Colorado has this reputation of having 300 days of sunshine a year. And yeah, that is pretty accurate. But what they don't tell you in the brochure is all the other crazy weather that we have. And it's not just in the winter. So a few minutes ago, I was talking about hail and how crazy hail damage you can have, not only on your car, but also on your home. That's just one other weather phenomenon that we have out here, but also we have a ton of just crazy, differences from one day to the next. I'm actually dealing with this right now. It's July 5th today that I'm filming this, and had a great 4th of July weekend. But, a few days ago, prior to July 4th, we were sitting in the 70s, some beautiful days here in Denver. And now we're pushing 102 degrees in a couple days. We've got crazy winds, tons of wildfires all over the state. There are just all these other factors that just really don't get talked about much until you get out here and live here and experience it for yourself. There are a lot of people that move out here, and maybe this is something that you guys have been thinking about watching this when you hear the word weather and you think of, probably people that moved to Denver that just, think they're going to be okay with the winter months and then decide that it's just too much for them. And after 2 years of that, they move to somewhere sunnier and warmer. And yeah, there probably are a few people that do that, but man, the winters are actually pretty mild and mellow here. It's really all these other factors is what really catches people off guard and sometimes is enough to make them decide to leave. I wouldn't say that this by itself is what drives people to leave after 2 years, but I think this is a reason that really adds on to some of these others. So, people that are already feeling the pinch, for example, with affordability, kind of like that point one and reason 1 and 2 that I shared with you guys. The weather probably isn't enough by itself, but man, when you already are dealing with some of these other things and then you get hit with the hailstorm and some crazy wind or, fires right out your back door, that's enough to push people over the limit. And I think these are a lot of the people that are actually deciding to leave. For years, Denver was a hub for young professionals and people that were looking for jobs, a lot of them in the tech industry. But 2022, 2023, we actually saw a big shift with this. A lot of those tech jobs ended up going away. So they're coming back, I think, to some degree, but there's definitely a very unique job market at the moment. And I think that's the same across the entire country, but I wanted to make a point for this in the video because I think this is definitely something that is a contributing factor to a lot of people leaving after the 2-year mark. And that again is just the fact that people thought that there were all these great job opportunities, and there are still a lot out there, but man, it's been very flat recently when it comes to opportunities and people hiring and people just landing in those jobs that they really, really want. Not the okay type jobs, but the ones that they're really striving for. There's so much competition as well as all these other factors like AI and just different things that are outside of our control. When you take that again and pile that on top of aspects like how expensive it is to live here, it just beats people down and it gets to a lot of people to the point where they just decide to leave. Now, before we move on from this point, I just want to add one more thing. Yes, I'm talking in this video about people that are moving to Colorado and then completely leaving the state, but there's also another segment of people here in the Denver area, and that is people that move to Denver. After a couple years, they don't leave the state, but they do decide to leave Denver proper and find areas that are a little bit more affordable to live. And this is especially true for anybody that's able to work fully remotely. We're seeing areas that are just outside of the metro Denver area, areas like Fort Collins up to the north, even down south in Colorado Springs, even areas further south like Pueblo. There are these areas that are more affordable to live than the Denver metro area. And these areas are seeing some of these residents that have moved here recently within the last couple years. And after, just not being able to make it work in the Denver area because of expenses, they're starting to just relocate a little bit further outside of that main, center part of Denver, the Denver metro. So that's just something else to keep in mind that, if you're maybe somebody that comes out here and is just feeling beat up about affordability, well, if you are able to work remotely, there's still some fantastic places to live outside of Denver that could be a great alternative and definitely worth checking out. I've actually helped a few different people recently with Fort Collins. There's areas all around the Fort Collins area that are awesome. If you guys have never been to places like Timnath or even areas a little bit further to the west and a little bit to the south of Fort Collins, checking out places like Longmont, Gun Barrel, Erie. There's so many cool spots to check out that just aren't right in that central Denver area that are worth looking into. So long-winded way of just saying that before you completely leave, reach out. I'd love to share some really fun, cool spots that might be worth checking out. So let me know. Okay, so we made it through those first 4. Now we're finally ready for that 5th and final reason that people tend to leave Denver after about 2 years. And this is something that I actually personally am also dealing with. Whether or not you guys realize, I actually lived up in the mountains for about 15 years up in the Aspen area, moved back down to Denver about 5 years ago, and I'm personally dealing with this a little bit. And this is just simply put, isolation. Isolation is such a common issue that people deal with that move out here. And you can talk about this in different ways, but what I really want to get across here is that Denver is consistently ranked as one of the top states in the entire nation for difficulty meeting people. The reason for that, at least in my opinion, is because Denver has a very kind of a specific type of person that typically comes out and lives here. You think about the outdoor lifestyle, people that are very into health and fitness and extreme sports, going out on a 20-mile hike on the weekend or whatever it may be. I think a lot of people that first move out here just have a difficult time connecting with other people that maybe aren't at that level yet. I'm kind of at that level as well with you guys, meaning that when I moved back to Denver from the mountains, I had just differences of interests. I had things that I was, really passionate about that I had a hard time finding other people that were in that same boat as me. So I think it's really, really important to understand that if you are coming out to Colorado and you're moving to Denver, Be really just intentional about finding your tribe, finding the people that you do connect with, and doing that maybe even before you move out here. There's so many ways to do this today with social media. Finding different groups that you can join, finding different ways just to find these like-minded people that are interested in the same things you are. If you're able to do that early on, you can just have a lot more of a tribe around you. You don't feel as lonely, and you have people to explore with and just enjoy living out here. And that's the whole point that most of us are here in Colorado, is to enjoy the outdoors and just enjoy everything that Colorado offers. But if you don't have other people to do it with, one, it gets kind of, lonely and boring and just less likely to happen, because, some of these activities really are best done with other people. You can go out skiing by yourself, you can go out hiking, mountain biking, whatever it is. All of that stuff could always be done independently. But there's a level of safety as well as just enjoyment that happens when you do this with other people. And if you don't know anybody else that's doing these things, again, it can get pretty isolating, can get pretty lonely quick. So just bringing this all back into just making the point that it's so important just to really be intentional about finding those other people out there. And there's so many ways to do it that it's not as hard as you think it might be. And this is the one that I feel like is really steering people away, because after a year or two of being here and having these big ideas of all these great things you're going to get involved in, all of a sudden maybe you're not doing those as much because you just don't either have the finances, the ability to pay for them, or you just don't have that friend group of people to do them with. So really, really important just to find that tribe, find that group of like-minded people early on. That way you can enjoy from day one being out here in the Mile High City. So with all that being said, just want to kind of close this video out with one last thing, and that's just a little personal, just piece of advice for you guys. Colorado's amazing. Colorado is one of the coolest states in the nation, and Denver is without a doubt one of the best cities in America to live if it fits what you're looking for. So I just urge you guys just to make sure that the reason that you're moving to Denver aligns with, some of the best reasons that people typically come out here for, that stay. They're able to understand this, and they're able to really dive deep into just making this a reality, understanding that there are so many cool things to do out here, but you really just do need to be prepared, be very open with yourself and honest, and realize that a lot of these things do cost money. And if you're not quite ready to maybe afford those, rather than going way in debt, maybe just picking something else for the first year that you're out here, or just figuring creative ways to still have fun, but without spending your entire budget just to get involved. There's definitely different ways you can do this. For example, with the skiing and some of the sports that I talked about earlier, buying secondhand equipment, buying used stuff, maybe finding a friend that maybe also wants to get involved, and you guys can buy some of this stuff together and take turns using it. There's so many other ways to get creative and still make this a reality. And if you do that, I promise you guys aren't going anywhere. You're not going to be one of those people that leaves after 2 years, because you're going to realize this is a spot that can't be beat. Love Colorado, and I love Denver. And hopefully after watching this video, you guys are feeling confident about making the move yourselves. But if you have any specific questions or concerns after talking through some of these points today, reach out. Again, I always love connecting with you guys. And if you don't want to do a one-on-one with me, another great option is joining us on our next live free Denver homebuyer webinars. I do these every single month with one of my best friends. He's one of the top lenders in the entire country, and we're not selling anything. We do this for free. We're just trying to connect with people that are considering moving out here and just sharing advice and information and ways to just make sure that they're in the best position possible when that time comes to consider buying a house. So really hope you guys can join us on the next one. Just go to denverwebinar.com. I'll put the link down below. And with all that being said, you guys, hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. Hit that like and the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Living in Denver. I'll see you then.